What's going on, guys? This is Empty Box, and today we're going to be talking about Project Cars. Specifically, the time has come for a review. We're going to be talking about the PC version of the game specifically, and I am driving with a steering wheel. I have not tried a gamepad at all because I do have a steering wheel. That steering wheel would be a Fanatec Club Sport version 2. And before we begin, I kind of want to explain what I was expecting with Project Cars, because I think, given that I do tend to be more on the hardcore racing sim side of things to many people, they might get the wrong idea as to the things I say later on in this video, perhaps. And what I was expecting with Project Cars is a good, solid racing game that is reasonably realistic, although not necessarily the most realistic thing out there on the market, but good enough that it's enjoyable and fun. So the question is, does Project Cars deliver? And, well, the answer is, that's kind of the purpose of this video, so stay tuned. Okay, let's go ahead and begin with graphics. The graphics look great. It's Project Cars. I mean, really, I think everybody has seen the graphics in this game, and I'm pretty sure everybody has said, wow, those graphics are impressive, because they are. I will say, though, every now and then you do get the impression that this game really was developed in that awkward phase where it's switching from a previous generation of console hardware to a next generation console hardware, and some of the things just don't quite look up to the same standard, but overall it looks fantastic. And on a strongly positive note, they've enabled you to go ahead and change your different options to suit the way you want the game to look. For example, a lot of people like to have a lot of lens flare because it makes things look cooler to them or whatever. They prefer it for one reason or another. Personally, I don't like a lot of lens flare, so you know what I do? I turn it off, and the game allows you to. It's a simple option, and that's that. There's a lot of different effects that you can turn on, turn off, that are toggleable, so it's good to see that, as well as, for example, the helmet cam, which many people will recognize from the Need for Speed Shift series. That is still in this game. It is an option that you can use. You can change, your helmet settings and how the camera leans around, as well as you can turn off that blur effect that they use on the dashboard at high speed. Again, some people like it, some people don't. So let's have options so that way everybody's satisfied. They have done a very good job with the graphics, as well as giving options to the user to make sure that they can get the game to look the way they want. Another really good thing about the graphics is that it doesn't really matter what settings that you run this game on. For example, I've just done some testing in my own free time, just looking at things and seeing how they work out. There's also a video I'll link down the description that showcases the different settings side by side. And there's not really a noticeable difference in actual gameplay between using the lowest settings and using the highest settings. In fact, usually what it comes down to most visibly is just level of detail pop in and pop out, and when those things happen. There's not really a big noticeable difference between lower graphics in this game and higher graphics. Yes, you will notice in a screenshot, however in actual gameplay you're probably not sitting there staring at puddles, because this is a racing game after all. Okay, so off of the graphics and on to the next thing that Project Cars does exceptionally well, which actually this is probably my personal favorite feature of Project Cars, and that is the weather system. Unfortunately, there's just really not much to say about it because it just kind of is, and there's not really much explaining required. There's a lot of different weather options that you can choose from, and then there's up to 4 different options per race, if you so desire, and then the game will transition from one weather type to the next weather type to the next weather type to the next weather type in those scenarios. You can also inject some time acceleration to make that transition happen faster if you so desire, which is a nice bit of control. Especially when coupled with the graphics engine and how good this game looks, the weather system is fun. I've done more races in the rain in this game just because it looks awesome than I've probably done in any other game combined, even though I actually like driving in the rain. It's just kind of one of those things where it adds more to the experience than what it probably should. Is this something that eventually we'll probably get bored of, and I think most of us will stop doing rain races all the time? Probably, but at least for the here and the now, it's a blast. It's fun to play with. It's something that is done better in this game than in any other game or sim out there currently on the market, which is definitely what Project Cars needs. Okay, moving on from the weather and the graphics, the things that this game crushes out of the park. Let's move on to the things that this game does relatively well, although not exceptionally well. And here is where we find physics, which I think really comes down to what were you expecting with this game. Personally, I was looking at this game as that hardcore racing game, which is where I'd put the Gran Turismo and the Forza series. Realistic, definitely, intended to be realistic, a lot of tuning options and things like that, but maybe not necessarily a sim as we would typically classify it on, the PC side of things. From that standpoint, I think Project Cars really has it pretty much nailed down. If you're expecting some sort of super hardcore simulation that's the next revolution in sim racing on PC, not so much. Not so much. This was my biggest concern for Project Cars because, after all, Slightly Mad Studios has had easily the worst track record within serious racing game development over the past, since GTR 2. So, yeah. I know a lot of people were expecting, oh my goodness, Need for Speed Shift. I'm pleased to report that the crazy floating feeling is not nearly as problematic this go around. You can still tell that it is developed from the same developers and with the same type of ideals, but at the same time, it's nowhere near as problematic. I can actually stand to drive this game in a car over 200 horsepower. I can't say the same about Need for Speed Shift 2. Now, it certainly does depend on what car you are driving. In my opinion, in this game, the road cars are easily the worst in the game. In fact, I really can't stand them. I just more or less put up with them if I have to put up with them because I need to put up with them, but I try to not put up with them because I don't enjoy driving them, so I try not to, more or less. That pretty much describes my thoughts on that. In general, they just kind of feel like they have stability control baked into the cars, and nothing really seems like it ever wants to bite you or do anything that you would necessarily expect to, even when you're trying to get the car to do something absolutely stupid. And on the track day and the race cars, again, the same type of behavior in terms of, yes, it feels like it's definitely safety sealed for your protection, but at the same time, I do kind of feel like the handling traits inherent with this game that are more evidenced with the road cars are less of a problem with the race cars, because you're not going to be driving them sideways. That's not the point of driving the race cars, or the track day cars, because that's A, not fast, as well as B, not fast, as well as C, not fast, so you don't really ever do that. Cars still behave in the way you would generally expect them to. However, this game doesn't have an edge to it. And if you're looking for realism, don't even try and drive in the rain in this game. You'll only end up frustrating yourself because it's not even close to realistic at all. In terms of car setups, you have all of the options that you would expect to find in a racing sim. You have various suspension setups, high speed, low speed, damper adjustments, suspension geometry, camber, toe in, toe out, spring rates, anti-roll bars, and downforce levels, gearing, and differentials. You have all that stuff that you would expect. One thing I must mention as well, the default setups are very, very safe. Very safe. They quite clearly have been tuned to assist drivers who are using a controller or less experienced drivers to help them drive the car and keep the thing on the road rather than necessarily what is fastest. So if you are a experienced racing game player and you're used to games like this, you'll definitely want to start working on the setup right away, because there's definitely a lot of time to be found in that setup. In terms of force feedback, this is another area where I'm pleasantly surprised. Actually, I'm really impressed with the force feedback, because maybe it's actually number 2 after the weather system on things that I actually like with this game. To me, with my steering wheel, using the default included Fanatec Club Sport version 2 profile, it's pretty much almost exactly the same feeling as GameStop Car in my hands, which, if you're around this channel, you know I'm a huge fan of GameStop Car, and to have force feedback of the same caliber, of the same level, solid. I have no complaints as to the way that the force feedback is behaving currently, although I will say, of course, that's something that's subject to other people's interpretations and how it affects you. There are a lot of options available within the game to tweak them. Some of them are global options, some of them are per car options, so there is a lot of adjustability built in. However, not necessarily a good thing, because that does mean you have a lot of different settings to tweak. I will put a link down in the description, though, to a thread on a forum with a couple of different settings that a lot of users are really liking, if you are so inclined. Personally, again, though, I'm quite satisfied with the feel, but again, your mileage may vary. So at this point, I could say that Project Cars is a pretty solid game. However, here's kind of where the things start to fall off the bus a little bit, and that is the game itself. And really, here is where Project Cars starts to swing and miss. These are the things that transfer this game from a 8.5 type of game to merely a 7. And it's at this stage that I mentioned the career mode. And the career mode gets mentioned here not because it's terrible, not because it's unplayable or broken or bugged out in some fashion, but because it doesn't really matter. And it doesn't really matter because of a design decision, which that design decision is the fact that they've left everything, absolutely everything, left unlocked right off the bat. You know, there's no unlocking cars in this game. There's no unlocking different career tiers. You can start wherever you would like. For example, if as soon as you get the game you want to start at Formula A, which is the game's equivalent of Formula 1, go ahead. Doesn't matter. You can. You know, if you want to start driving P2 cars, go ahead. Perfectly fine. You can. You know, if you want to start at the karts, go ahead. You can. You know, it doesn't matter. It just gives you that option, which sounds great when you just hear that. However, when you start to think about what that actually affects, in my opinion, it really has a significant effect, and it really makes it feel like more of a grind than what, you know, you see with games like Gran Turismo and Forza, which is the reason why Project Cars took this direction. Really, I know some people are going to disagree with this, and they're going to think it's a great design decision, and I do think there is some merit to what they attempted to do. However, I just feel like in general, it doesn't really matter because it pretty much makes the whole thing totally insignificant at all. Which, especially when coupled with the fact that there's never really significant decisions. For example, if say I'm a LMP1 category driver, if I'm a Prototype 1 driver within the career, do I maybe go ahead and take a chance on a mid-pack Formula A team and see if I can do well there and maybe eventually get into, you know, a high caliber ride that can give me, you know, race winning capability and championship winning capability? Or do I just stay where I'm comfortable and win big races and win lots of championships and things like that? You know, there's no career decisions because not only does it not matter because you can just go ahead and restart wherever, but also because there's no difference between the cars. And in fact, the way you choose your team is basically which one has the cooler name or which one has the cooler logo. As far as I can tell, you can't even see what their paint scheme is, so you can't even decide which car looks cooler. And another thing with the career mode is actually a design decision that I quite like, although, again, it does end up feeding back into the grind fest that it feels like. And that is, they allow you to choose how long of a race you would like to do by an adjustable multiplier, as well as how difficult you would like the AI to be. For example, whenever I get invited to one of the kart races that you can compete in, you know what I end up doing? I end up turning the AI down to 0% and turning the race to a 2-lap race because I hate them that much. But I guess I just kind of have to do them because, well, it provides some sort of arbitrary benefit or something, I guess. None of this is really ever made clear. Like, it's just silly. It's not unplayable. It's not worthless. You know, it does add some gameplay to the game because it is throwing you into different conditions and different races and giving you a good wide, you know, angle view of everything within Project Cars if you choose to play the career mode as intended. However, the whole thing just kind of ends up feeling a little bit pointless and a little bit off the mark. However, what really damages the career mode, even more so than the design decision to leave everything unlocked, is the fact that the AI in this game just, quite frankly, isn't good. It needs work. It is the biggest problem within Project Cars right now. You know, racing the AI in this game, to me, doesn't feel like racing. It doesn't feel like even racing AI. It feels much more like babysitting, because I'm constantly looking over my shoulder wondering, when in the world is the AI going to dive bomb the snot out of me and stuff their car into a gap that isn't even close to there? You know, you have no safety at all. It is like driving on a public server race. Like, honestly, you just don't know if that car behind you is just going to decide that you are going to be its brakes for that corner temporarily. For example, driving the Formula cars, the most fragile cars in the game with damage enabled, is an exercise in frustration, because all it takes to ruin your race is one stupid move by the AI chucking it way up the inside from who knows where, and that can be your race ruined, because, well, that's going to damage your car quite significantly because they are fairly fragile, and there's really not much you can do about it other than dodge the cars that are dive bombing you, and as well as alternatively dodging the cars in front of you that go through corners really slowly. It's just very frustrating, especially in those cars. It's at least somewhat tolerable in the GT cars where, you know, slight contact is less likely to really heavily affect your race, but in the Formula cars, my goodness, this game is an exercise in frustration sometimes. Which really just makes the AI slower as well as easier to pass, and well as highlights the fact that they are AI and they are totally stupid out there. You know, another thing, they are what I would consider quite slow. Even on the highest difficulty settings available, 100 difficulty, I still find that I can hang with them without practicing a car track combination, without working on the setup, which, given that the setups in this game out of the box aren't what I would consider particularly good or particularly suitable for my driving style, I can safely say that if I actually practice, if I actually work on the setup, they're pretty much just going to be somewhere 10 seconds behind me on track. And I'm not someone who is incredibly fast. Yes, I know I'm faster than most people who are probably going to play this game. However, I can't imagine the guys who are actually truly fast. And some of you people won't believe this. There are people who are way faster than I am. Trust me, that's not modesty. That's fact. I can't imagine that they would get absolutely anything from the AI, because they just wouldn't have anywhere close to the sort of speed needed to at least even keep up and offer some sort of challenge. Really though, the AI is the biggest problem with this game, and it really does put a damper on Project Cars in general, because it does make doing longer races seem almost like playing with fire, you know, because like that story I talked about previously with the Formula Golf at Dubai. Just imagine if that would have been an hour and a half long race. Like, oh my goodness. Like, the frustration level, the rage. That's instant uninstall material right there. Really, for a game to be so heavily focused on single player racing and the single player experience, and to have AI that is this lackluster, is quite frankly very disappointing. This is something that could be improved in a patch, something that hopefully will be improved in a patch, but, you know, again, I'll believe it when I see it. Wrapping things up, I have put a couple of other things down in the description that I feel are relevant, but not necessarily needing to go in this video, just for the sake of keeping things short-ish. But, you know, overall, I'll put it this way. It's not a good driving sim, not a good racing sim. There are better titles out there for that, for sure, especially on the PC. As a racing game, it's okay. You know, there's flashes of goodness, greatness there, as some people would say. But it definitely needs work. It definitely needs improvement. As it is right now, I would strongly suggest waiting for a sale if you haven't already purchased this game, because, first of all, you're not really missing out on anything, as well as the fact that, you know, maybe there will be a patch that improves especially the AI behavior, which would definitely make this a better game and yet have a better experience by waiting for that anyways. But overall, I think it's just kind of one of those games that it's good, but it just doesn't really do enough to ensure that it's going to be one of those games that I'm going to be coming back to years down the road. So it's okay. Definitely not even close to living up to the hype at all. Not even close, as is so often the case. But hope you guys enjoyed. Hype bye.
That's a podium finish. Lovely job. Nice driving.